A very good morning to all of you. So, welcome back in today's session of conflict management. So, very important topic. In our day-to-day life, if we say that communication is something which is the part of our day-to-day life. So, again, same for conflict also. It's C for communication, C for conflict. Wherever there is communication, there is flow of information, there is exchange of information, there are two or more people together. Conflict is by default the part of that. Internally, if we talk about personal life, we do have conflicts, but we don't give it the name of conflict. We just say, okay, mismatch of views are not matching. That is the general term which we use. But when we are into the organization, when we are at a workplace, when we are into any kind of entrepreneurship, anything related to work, when we are there, that simply means that there is going to be conflict. Conflict is by default the part of that organization, by default the part of the people. Because when there are a group of people, things may differ, things may change, and along with the mismatch of views, there is mismatch of ethics also. There might be a situation when both of them are coming up with a different idea for the same specific things. When both of them are not ready to agree with each other, the conflict happens. So conflict means, like in the last session, we have discussed about characteristics of conflict in the last session. So we'll just have a quick briefing about that again. So characteristics of conflict says it is a process. Conflict is a continuous process. It occurs in very different layers. Start with the difference in values, difference in viewpoints, and difference of interest, interpersonal differences. And the first layer is always the misunderstanding. We are unable to understand what the other person is trying to say because we already have something else in our mind. When we have a certain kind of perception, we don't listen to open mind, listen with open mind. When we are not listening with open mind, that times there is misunderstanding which takes place. So it is conflict is a process. Second says is it is inevitable. It is existing everywhere. As I told you, whether it's personal life or professional life, it's your home or your office or your working place, conflict will exist there because two individuals are not same, right? There are difference in the views, difference in the thinking, difference of perception, difference in the way of dealing with the situation. So when the difference is there, when the different word enters in the conversation, in the communication, their conflict enters. It is a normal part of life here. So it is like if both of them agree, then it's a win-win situation. If one agrees, other don't, then it is a win-lose situation or maybe lose-lose situation. So it is normal part of life. It is not a blunder which has happened. If in the organization you see that conflicts are going on, so that means they are productive, they are thinking creative. That's why conflict is going on. If I talk about a leadership where everything autocratic leadership style, where everything is being taken care of just one single person, the topmost authority, there are no chances of conflict because they have been set rules, regulations, no decision making power, no part in the process of decision, nothing. So there are going to be no decisions. But when two open-minded people or a group of open-minded people enters into discussion where their views are, they are presenting their views, they are having limited resources, the conflict arises. We don't want to work as per the direction he or she is saying. So strong opposition is there, and that leads to conflict. Then after opposition, we have independence and interaction. You know, we all are independent person. We all have the independence to speak, to present our views, to share our views. So without independence, there is no interaction. But when there is independence, where there is interaction, conflicts take place. And everyone is inflicted with conflicts. Everyone, individual, organization, when two or more people are there, it can be between two individuals, it can be between one person with a group, it can be between group and the organization, it can be between an individual and the organization. So the conflict is everywhere. It is unidimensional. So that means, uh, you know, it comes in different ways. Sometimes conflict is very small, it don't take a drastic look, but sometimes it becomes very big problem for the organization to deal with, for the leaders to solve those conflicts. Because usually when we have small group of people, we have leaders for that. So leaders are the person who look after that thing. So leader have to be proactive. He should be a person who is reactive as well as proactive when any kind of conflict situation comes within the organization. So these were the things which we have already discussed in the last session related to the characteristics. Now, what are the sources of conflict? What are the sources by which at workplace the conflict happens? There can be many sources, right? There can be some external forces. There can be sudden change in the trend. There can be organizational sources. So we have many different, we have basically 4 different type of sources by which the conflict happens, occurs in the workplace. Just discuss about what is conflict, what are the sources, like why do we say that there are different sources which affect the working place in the organization, which bring conflicts within the individual or the group of people. So what are they? The first is conflict occurs. When it occurs, conflict occurs when there is a perception of incompatible interest between workplace and participation. So they have the perception that the interest, the way the organization wants to work is not matching with our own views. So the perception of incompatibility of interest between the workplace and the people leads to conflict. It distinguishes from disputes. Disputes are merely a byproduct of conflict. Now here, many times people just use dispute and conflict word interchangeably, but they are very different from each other. Conflict is something which is normal, which is a byproduct, like which happens in day-to-day life. But dispute is something which is a very big outlook. You know, dispute is a very broad term which ends up having some legal cases, having some legal formalities. So conflict is just part of that. If you have a dispute, we can say that yes, for this dispute, maybe there earlier there was some kind of small conflicts, group of conflicts came together, and then it has taken a drastic look, it has taken a bigger outlook, that is dispute. But when we talk about both of these terms are very different from each other. Dispute is merely a byproduct of conflict. After conflict, the initial stages, conflict. Second, typical dispute comes in the form of formal court cases, grievances, arguments, threats, and counter threats, etc. So if there are disputes, how this dispute comes? They comes as like there is a court case going on, grievances are there, argument, lot of constant arguments are there. There's some kind of threat you are using. For your threat, other person is using the counter threat. These all things comes under dispute. When dispute happens, these all things happens. Conflict can exist without dispute also, but dispute do not exist without conflict. So there are no disputes, there is no legal formalities, no court cases, no threat, no arguments. Still, conflict can be there. But if these things are happening, if there is these court cases, grievances, these things are there, that means conflict was there in the initial stage. Last, conflict exists in every workplace without turning into dispute. Each and every individual, as we discussed, are different from each other. Their perception, their ethics, their way of working, their way of thinking, their way of dealing with the things, their way of solving the problem is different from every other individual. And when there are different individuals working together at one place, then conflict will definitely exist. It is the internal part. You can say the communication is the internal part of the organization. Same way, conflict is also again internal part. It comes by default. It has not been called. It has not been written in the rules and regulations. It is something which just becomes the part of the organization. So here the sources of conflict. The first source of conflict is interpersonal source of conflict. Now, interpersonal source of conflict is something like office policies, gossips, humors, language, personality style. These things often clash and creating a great deal of conflict in the workplace. When there's a lot of office politics, we all are familiar that whenever there is big organization, politics is the internal part again. There is politics everywhere. If we talk about our college life, colleges, there also these politics are there. If we talk about the organization, politics is there. So politics is the internal part. So whenever there is politics, there are some gossips and rumors going in the organization. There is difference in the personality, in the language. So often these all things create a great deal of conflicts. Because of these things, conflict enters into the organization. There are strong ethnoculture and racial sources of conflict as well as gender conflict. We have been listening that there happens to be gender biasness in the organization. So same way, gender conflict enters when there is such kind of thing. So these ethnoculture, the racial sources, caste, creed, color, sex, the gender, all these things make conflict enter into the organization. Third, people often bring their stress from home into the office, leading to further conflicts. You are not free-minded, right? In the morning, you had a conflict with your at home, you had some kind of argument, or you were unable to sleep last night properly. You were going through a lot of stress, maybe personal or professional, whatever, but there is some type of stress going on in your mind. So when that type of stress is going on in your mind, it may lead to conflicts. When you enter into the organization, you'll be very disturbed. You will be very, you might turn yourself to be very rude. You might argue on very small things. You might shout. You might get arrogant. So all these things, when all these things are there, that will lead to conflict, because no one in the organization would accept that behavior. No one will accept your rudeness, no matter how superior position you are holding. But they have their own identity. They're not going to accept these unnecessary things. So when this happens, the conflict happens in the workplace. The strong drive for work-related achievement in some participant can clash with the participant who do not emphasize work-related success in their life. In the organization, everything is interdependent, interrelated, right? Some person's work will be related to your work, to your own work. So there are two set of people. Mr. X, who is very perfect with his work, who is related to achievement. He wants to achieve in his life. He is very perfect, dedicated in his work. Second is the person who is not very emphasized, who is not very much concerned about the work related things, who don't want work related success. Two different people are there. Mr. X work is dependent on Mr. Y, and he's not ready to emphasize on his work. He's not giving the timely output. He is usually exceeding the deadlines, and because of that, Mr. X work is also getting delayed. So these type of things, the way of working, the way of taking the things, the way of their career growth, the approach they have, that again create clashes in the participant. Second source, that was the first, that was interpersonal, that was related to your personal beliefs, your personal things. Now, second is the organizational source of conflicts, those relating to hierarchy and the inability to resolve conflicting interests are quite predominant in the workplace. Now, when there is hierarchy is being followed, there is a hierarchy which they have to follow. When people in the superior position are unable to resolve the conflicts, are unable to be proactive to solve the conflicts, or they even don't react immediately to solve those conflicts, this will lead to conflict in the workplace to last for a longer duration. Difference in supervisory style between departments can cause the conflict. Now, one supervisor is such who is having very good, very open style where he is making involvement of all the team members, all the followers. Whereas the other supervisor is one who is not involving all the people. He is the one who is not allowing every people to enter into the organization. He is not the person who is uh, making every individual believe that they are the internal, they are the important part of the team, they are contributing a lot towards the team. So here the conflicts start arising because the supervisor style is different. So people in other supervisor, they'll say that that superior is good, he'll say that that superior is good. So here the in between departments can cause these conflicts. So it should be a almost same type of style, supervisor style, leadership style, which should be followed. Work style clashes, seniority, juniority, and pay equity conflicts. The way we are working, some may like that way, some may don't like that way. The way of working is different from for all of us. We are working in a group of 5 people, all of them are working in a different way. So for me, I'm not okay with their way of working, for them they are not okay with my way of working, and here the conflicts start arising. Even the seniority, juniority, that I'm the senior, so you have to do whatever I said. I'm the senior, so it's okay if I don't fulfill my commitment, but you being a junior, you need to fulfill the commitment. The senior gives a strict deadline to the junior. If they're not committing, he just questions them, he asks them, he even be rude, he shouts on them. But when it comes to senior, if he is not fulfilling the deadline, nothing happens. It has been taken very casually. So there again, conflict, there are chances that the conflict may happen. And the last thing under organizational source of conflict is conflict can arise over resource allocation, the distribution of duties, workload and benefits, different level of tolerance of risk taking, and varying views on accountability. Now, if I am going to take one by one, resource allocation. If there is no even resource allocation within the team members or within the organization, conflict will arise that others are getting proper resources, why not we? Just a small example, if one team has been given a proper setup, a proper way of working, a proper hall, that team always get the hall whenever they want to have some team building activities, whenever they want to spend some time with the team. They always get the resources. But when it comes to other team, it's always that resource is always booked. So it may arise, there may arise conflict that why this is happening. For one team, it is always available. Why don't we have the access to those resources? That is resource allocation. Second is the distribution of duties in the team. When they will see that some people are being overburdened with the duties and some are just being given relaxation, so conflict will arise. So there should be even distribution of the duties within the team. Workload and benefits, like what workload we are getting. If there is difference in workload, like one person is being asked to work from 9 to 7 in the evening, Another person is just logging off somewhere around 5, and then no one is there to question that person, no one is asking that person. He or she is taking long breaks during the lunch, like 1.5 hours. They are at times they are not available for the meeting. Most of the time they are not available for the meeting. So in that situation, conflict will arise that why they are being given additional benefit. We all are a team. If it's compulsory for us to attend the meeting, if it is compulsory for us to work till 7, if we all are working, then why not that person? So if that kind of thing happens, if they are given additional benefits, then conflict will arise. Or there is workload. Some person are being given extra workload, more workload, and other are just enjoying their part, other are just relaxing. Then again, the conflict will arise. Different level of tolerance, risk taking, and varying on the views of accountability. These are the things by which the conflict in the organizational arise. Trend and changes, most important. As soon as the pandemic started, there was lot of changes. Everyone was being asked to work from home, so there was change in the trend. Like we used to go to office, we used to work, we used to say take some short break, tea break, then lunch break, breakfast, then high tea. A lot of breaks used to be there. All of a sudden that thing changed. We were having comfort zone, we were having people to discuss, but now everyone was just available on call. We don't know who has started working or not. Then all of a sudden we were being forced to sit at home and work. Now when we were sitting at home, the working hours increased, the working pattern increased, long meetings started happening. There was no short break, no power sleep, no power breaks were there. So there were a lot of changes, and due to this change also the conflict can arise within the organization at the workplace. But at this pandemic time, nothing happened because there was not no option. They were forced to sit at home and work. It was not their willingness. So trend change means technological change can cause conflict, as can changing work methodology. If there is sudden technological change, for example, earlier you were using Zoom as a Zoom meeting software, but all of a sudden you have switched from Zoom to Jitsi or from Zoom to Google Meet. So there is change. Now earlier it was and technical thing, if I'll say that earlier it was supposed to be, if I talk about company secretary, chartered accountant, it used to be, every work used to be on paper, written work, written checking. All of a sudden they have come up with some software which is going to check the check and validate everything. So again, it will take time. People might not adjust to those things, so it can be a reason of conflict. And the working, if the working methodology changes, like for example, working methodology as in it used to be 9 to 5 duty, all of a sudden it is 9 to 7 duty. It used to be Saturday, Sunday used to be complete off, but now it came that on Saturday you might have to work. So again, there can be conflict. Second is constant reorganization leading to further stress and conflicts. Some organization you will see constantly reorganized. There's constant changes in the working way, rules and regulation, their working methodology. All these things continuously change. There's no stability in anything. So this will lead to a lot of stress because someday we were doing something else. Today it's other thing. Or at the workplace, what happens today, I'm being asked to do HR role, tomorrow I've been put to technical thing. So the sudden changes, no, it's going to bring a lot of stress for me because I took 10 to 15 days to understand the things. Now I'm comfortable, now I have understood everything, I am doing all the things. But all of a sudden you have come up with the next change that now you won't be managing this, you will be managing the other stream, the other department. So all these things, the constant reorganization will bring conflict. By the conflict will come because of the stress they are going through. Sudden changes, understanding everything, till the time you understand everything is again gone. So these all things create a lot of stress, and that stress changes to conflict. So this is again one of the reason of conflict at workplace. And the last one is, the more change and the more recent the change, the more likely there will be significant conflict. So it says the more frequently we are bringing the change, and the change is also not constant, that is also changing again and again. So there are more likely that there are going to be more conflicts within the organization at the workplace. So the conflict are going to be with the senior management, or the conflict can be with the organization as well. Last source of workplace conflict is external factors. You know, these external factors really affect. For example, if we are the organization who is having a close contact with the government rules and regulation, we are working as per that rules and regulation. All of a sudden, the rules changed. The government completely changed. New rules, new government. So all these external forces act as a conflict booster, giving a room for the conflict to enter within the individual or in the organization. For external factors, when we talk about external factors, what type of external factors are there? That is, economic pressure are caused by recession, changing market, domestic and foreign competition, and the effect of free trade between the countries. With one country, we were allowed to have free trade, but all of a sudden that stopped. It is going to affect the organization. Conflict will happen between in the organization with the government. There's sudden change in the domestic and foreign competition that has changed. The market has changed. The trend has changed. There's recession in the market. So these economic pressure are one of the factors for conflict in the workplace. Conflict arises with client and suppliers affecting customer service and delivery of goods. Now, how there is conflict between client and suppliers? We are unable to meet the deadline. We are unable to provide them the exact same thing which they have asked for. We are unable to provide them the quality product. So when all these things are there, then conflict arises between the client and the suppliers. We have not delivered on time. We have not delivered the right quality, or maybe there are a lot of damaged product which they have received. Customer is not satisfied with the services we are offering. So all these things will lead to conflict between the client and the supplier. A change in government can have a tremendous impact. As I told you, if the government changes, with government, a lot of things changes. Rules changes, regulation changes, dealing with the things changes. All of a sudden, one government has started one project, other government just comes and put an hold to that project. So it is going to impact the workplace very badly. Last says, companies or government departments that have constant relationship with outside organization will find this to be major source of conflict for workplace. Now, those organizations which are working closely with the government department, government companies, these type of organization and the change in government policies, these things are going to be the major source of conflict in the workplace participants, because these changes, frequent changes once in a while are acceptable, but the frequent changes are not acceptable. And when we will have frequent changes, for example, we are running with a project, all of a sudden there's change in the government, there's change in the government department, government companies, and they have told us to put a hold on that project. What we are going to do? We have given our heart, our soul for that project, and it's about to get completed, and now you're saying that that project is no more needed. Conflict will arise. When you're working with your 100% dedication, when you're giving your best, when you are being more productive, and at that point of time your project is being kept on hold, your project is being asked to stop, definitely you will get angry, definitely you'll be uh, feeling very bad, and that badness, that difficulty, that sudden stop is going to make you enter into the conflict with the workplace participants. Now, these were the sources of conflicts. We have some causes. Why conflict arises? What are the causes of those conflicts? So all the causes of conflicts we'll be discussing in the next session. But yes, We'll be discussing few factors by which we can avoid conflicts. When we are just talking about conflicts, we are just talking about the sources. So sources as in conflict can arise because there are not enough resources, the evenly distribution of resources not there, or the company is not having proper set rules. It is changing from person to person. Some persons are given liberty, some are not, or the working environment, the workload is different from different persons. The proper training is not being provided when there is sudden change in the technology. So these small things, when we hear these things look very small, but when we bring it into practicality, we will see that these small things are the biggest cause of conflict. And one of the biggest cause is the gender biasness. A female, if she's capable, she's not getting promotion, she's not being paid well enough for her work, conflict will be there. But on the other hand, it can be a male who deserves to get the promotion, but a female has been promoted just because she's a female. Conflict happen. You might have seen in many organizations there we have reserve seats. Conflict take place due to that also, that when we have scored best, when we have given our best, then why the reservation entered, right? There's continuous conflict going on between the government and some students also, in respect to the reservation. The reservation should be avoided, but there are few things which are not beyond government control also. They are supposed to do that, they have to do that. They cannot change that immediately, right? So there are a lot of reasons, lot of things due to which conflict happens. Conflict arises at the workplace, and yes, due to these reasons, due to these conflicts, the working atmosphere get disturbed. The productivity is also impacted. More the conflict, more the productivity get impacted. In a team of 10 members, when there are continuous conflict happen when the team is at the development stage. When there are continuous conflict in the team, then the working is going to be affected. We won't be able to be more productive because most of the time our energy will be into the conflict. So there it is always advisable that the leader should be such a person who is good in solving the conflict, who don't allow conflict to enter. He is so even, he's distributing everything evenly, whether it's resource, whether it's work, whether it's task. He is building, coming up with team building activities in the within the team, so that they know each other. When we are very close with each other, when we have a strong bond, there are chances that the conflict will reduce, right? Because if we talk about a personal life, we do have conflict with our parents, our sibling, our family, our friend, but that is not continuous, or it doesn't last long. It happens and it is solved immediately because of the bond we are having. So in order to avoid conflicts, in order to have a very friendly environment of working, in order to have a conflict free team working environment, you need to be proactive. You need to create a strong bond in the individual. When individual will be mature enough to understand, to deal with the situation themselves, then conflict is not going to last with them for a longer duration. It will just come and go. Conflicts are good also because it is going to bring innovativity, creativity, new suggestions in the team also. But it should be solved immediately or in just couple of days. It should not be stressed. It should not take the form of disagreement, distrust. Those things should not enter, right? So conflict is the internal part, as we have discussed the characteristics, where it says it's a continuous process, it is everywhere. So with that, we have completed the sources, how the conflict enters into the workplace. Now we know how it has entered, but what are the reasons, what are the causes of conflict, that we are going to discuss in the future session. So that's all for today's session. We are done with the session. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask your doubts. And if no, then we are good to wind up the session. Yes? Okay, so we are done with the session. With this, we have completed conflict management, the sources of conflict management. In the next session, we are going to start with the causes of conflict. So till then, bye bye. Take care.